You are what I'm looking for. I know what I'm looking for.
In today's video, I'm going to be creating backgrounds with a background stamp. This is a red rubber cling background stamp from jennycarddesigns, and this is called Delicate Snowflakes. And I'm going to show you how to stretch your supplies to get 3 very different backgrounds from one stamp. Stick around to the end of this video, and I've got a bonus project to share with you as well. Project number 1, ink blending and heat embossing. So we're going to start creating this project, and I'm going to be using some Distress Oxide inks. I have a variety of colors picked out here, and I'm going to create some backgrounds with these colors. I have a silicone craft mat that I'm going to work on, and I have a couple of pieces of cardstock that is Bristol Smooth cardstock. This is great cardstock for inking with oxide ink. It blends beautifully. So I've got some Uncharted Mariner Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to saturate this paper. I'm just going to blend this color on. I'm not worrying about harsh lines or anything. I'm just covering this entire cardstock with solid color. I'm using a Ranger foam domed blending sponge, and it really helps apply that ink nicely. So once my color is saturated, I'm going to grab my heat gun and just help dry this, because for the next step in this project, this paper needs to be completely dry. I'm going to grab an anti-static powder bag. I'm going to cover the entire panel with that powder bag so that when I use embossing powder on this, it's not going to stick in the areas other than where I stamp. So I'm inking up my stamp with VersaFine watermark ink. This is just a clear sticky ink, and then I'm going to drop that panel on top of the background, and then I'm going to use a regular piece of printer paper, and I'm just going to rub over that stamp to get that ink to transfer onto my background. And then once this is done, I'm going to flip that piece of paper over so that there's no ink on it. And I'm going to sprinkle my embossing powder over top of the image. And I'm using jennycarddesigns Fine Detail Silver embossing powder, and I'm going to cover that entire panel. I'll put all of the excess powder back into the container. And then I'm going to heat set this background with my heat tool until all of the powder is smooth and melted. So I'm just keeping my heat gun moving. As soon as the powder melts and smooths out, I just move it along to the next part. You don't want to leave it in one area too long, or you'll risk burning the embossing powder. I really love the look of this silver powder on that background. It really pops right off. It's absolutely gorgeous. Okay, that's project number 1. We're going to turn these into cards later. Let's move along to project number 2, and this is the Embossed Resist. So I've got a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock and my background stamp and my VersaFine watermark ink, and I'm just going to pop this panel on top of the background stamp. Use my printer paper to press everything in so that I get a good transfer of ink on that cardstock. And for this one, I'm going to use embossing powder again, but I'm going to be using jennycarddesigns Fine Detail Clear embossing powder. So I'm going to sprinkle that embossing powder over my background, making sure that I get good coverage. And I'll just spread that embossing powder around and tap off the excess. And then once again, using my heat tool to heat set this until it is smooth and melted. So this is a little bit harder to see, but once we get the ink on there, we'll be able to see this much better. So I'm using Distress Oxide inks. I'm using Salvage Patina, Villainous Potion, and Prized Ribbon. And I'm just blending random areas of those colors, and I go back and forth over those colors to blend them all in together to get a good variety of color on this background. And then I'm going to grab a dry cloth, and I'm just going to buff away the excess ink that's going to be sitting on top of the embossing powder. So the embossing powder resists the ink, and I'm able to wipe that away. And also that cloth helps blend those colors together, so we get a nice smooth transition of colors. So here we go. Here's a look at our magical snowflake background. All right, moving along to project number 3. This is Ombre Ink Blending. So I've got my stamp all cleaned off, ready for my third background. And for this one, I'm going to pull in my Misty. I'm going to remove all of the things out of my MISTI. I keep my wreath builder templates in here and my mouse pad. I'm just going to pull all of that out, and I'm going to pop the background into the MISTI. So I'm kind of using the MISTI backwards here. I'm going to attach my cardstock panel to the door of my MISTI. I'm just applying a little bit of tape runner there, and I'll set my cardstock on top of the stamp where I want it to stamp, and I'll pick up that cardstock with the door of the MISTI. This way, if I need to stamp more than once, my cardstock will be in the same position. So I'm using my ink blending tools here, and I'm going to pounce the blending tool on top of the stamp. So I'm going to use 3 different colors. I'm going to use Selvage Patina, Uncharted Mariner, and Villainous Potion. And by using my blending tool and dabbing onto the stamp, I'll be able to create an ombre effect and blend the colors into each other so there are no harsh lines. So I close the door of the MISTI and I press into the stamp, and then in the areas where I feel like we need to blend a little bit more or it needs a little bit more ink, I can go back in and do that. And since my cardstock is taped to the door, it's not going to shift. It's going to be in the same area. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to stamp with a little bit more ink, close the door of my MISTI and press, and then we have a beautiful ombre background. So we've got those 3 colors blended together very nicely, and I love these sort of teals, blues, and purples for Christmas cards. It's really pretty. Here's a look at our final background pattern. Now let's turn all of these into some easy cards. So I've gone through my stash and picked out 3 coordinating colored card bases. These are A2 size top folding card bases, and I'm just going to trim down these panels so that you can see the colored card base in behind. I picked out 3 different colors that I thought would match really nicely with all 3 of the designs. So I'm going to trim my panels down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And then I'm going to save the little scraps that I cut off from these panels off to the side, and we'll come back to those later. And now I'm going to adhere these background panels onto my card bases. And I think each one of these creates a unique and individual look, and I really love them. I've got these extra little snowmen die cuts that I've stamped and heat embossed. They're just sitting on my desk. I thought here would be a perfect time to use these little guys. These came from the jennycarddesigns Hygge Time stamp set, and I'll leave that link down below. So I'm going to grab a couple of coordinating color alcohol markers, and I'm just going to do some basic coloring on the little scarves and hats of my snowman, and then I'll color their nose, and that's it. I'm not doing any shading or fancy footwork here. It's just basic alcohol marker coloring, just laying down the color. You could use anything here, pencil, crayons, watercolors, whatever you like. And I just thought I would coordinate those little snowmen with each of the backgrounds. So I went ahead and I did that, and once I was happy with that, we're going to start working on some sentiments. So I have some of these strips. These are from a jennycarddesigns card kit from last year, and I just hadn't used them. These are already pre-done up little sentiment strips that can be foiled. I'm just going to leave them black, and I cut out the words that say Merry Christmas. Now I do have a little white edge on the side of these strips, and I'm taking an alcohol marker and just running it over the sides of the strip. Then this way you can't tell that it's white cardstock. So it just cleans it up nicely. And so I've got my little snowman adhered on the corner of each of the cards, and then my little Merry Christmas right in the bottom center. And then that's it. These cards are complete. They're super simple, super easy, beautiful cards, 3 different results with 1 single background stamp. Okay, for the bonus project, this happened to be my most favorite project that I created today. I've got a bunch of these little strips left over. Now, normally I would use them on the inside of the cards or throw them out. You know, if I didn't have a use for them, I'd get rid of them. So today I decided to cover a little piece of cardstock with some adhesive, and I'm just laying these strips in a diagonal fashion. So I'm just lining them up, starting from the bottom, working my way up, laying those little strips down, and then I'm going to cut off the excess and then reuse those little cutoff pieces to keep stacking up my strips to the very top of this cardstock. So I fill the entire cardstock. This piece measures 2.5 inches by 4 inches, and we're going to create a little holiday tag with it. So once I've got all my strips laid out and I've got all the excess cut off, here is what our panel looks like. I'm going to cut off one of the corners here, and then I'll use that little cut off piece as a guide to cut off the other side of my tag to create the traditional tag look and feel. Then I'm going to grab a hole punch and punch a hole in the top of my tag. And then I'm happy with the way that looks. Next, I wanted to grab one of those little snowmen that I had. I colored him in to match this tag as well. And I've got some foam squares here, and I'm going to pop up my little snowman on some foam squares. The last thing I want to do before I add my snowman is to stamp a to and from. I have this little block that I keep the words to and from on, and I leave it inside of my drawer so that I have it all the time whenever I need it for tags. So I stamp the back of that with my to and from, and then I'll pop my little snowman on the front of this little tag. And look how absolutely gorgeous this is. I love the result of this tag. It's so cute and Christmassy and fun, and I love all those colors. Okay, that's it for today. We're all done. Let's have a look and see what we've created here. 3 backgrounds and a bonus project with 1 background stamp. I encourage you to shop in your own stash, pull out a background stamp, try the 3 different techniques, and see what you can create to stretch your supplies and have some fun in your crafty space. Okay, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Coming up on screen is a video I think you may enjoy. Have yourself a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!